Turn this evening to Hosea in the 6th chapter. We got up through the 6th verse last week, and we're going to pick up here at the 7th verse, and my intention is we'll get all the way through the 7th chapter, and then and go from there as we continue to proceed. I'm going to read this passage, Hosea chapter 6, beginning in verse 7. But like Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessly with me. Gilead is a city of evildoers, tracked with blood. As robbers lie in wait for a man, so the priests band together. They murder on the way to Shechem. They commit villainy. In the house of Israel, I have seen a horrible thing. Ephraim's whoredom is there. Israel is defiled. For you also, O Judah, a harvest is appointed. When I restore the fortunes of my people, when I would heal Israel, the iniquity of Ephraim is revealed, and the evil deeds of Samaria, for they deal falsely. The thieves break in, the bandits raid outside, but they do not consider that I remember all their evil. Now their deeds surround them. They are before my face. By their evil they make the king glad, and the princes by their treachery. They are all adulterers. They are like a heated oven, whose baker ceases to stir the fire, and the kneading of the dough until it is unleavened, till it is leavened. On the day of our king, the princes become sick with the heat of wine. He stretches out his hand with mockers. For with hearts like an oven, they reproach their intrigue. All night their anger smolders. In the morning it blazes like a flaming fire. All of them are hot as an oven, and they devour their rulers. All their kings have fallen, and none of them calls upon me. Ephraim mixes himself with the peoples. Ephraim is a cake not turned. Strangers devour his strength, and he knows it not. Gray hairs are sprinkled upon him, and he knows it not. The pride of Israel testifies to his face, yet they do not return to the Lord their God, nor seek him for all this. Ephraim is like a dove, silly and without sense, calling to Egypt, going to Assyria. As they go, I will spread over them my net. I will bring them down like birds of the heaven. I will discipline them according to the report made to their congregation. Woe to them, for they have strayed from me. Destruction to them, for they have rebelled against me. I would redeem them, but they speak lies against me. They do not cry to me from the heart, but they wail upon their beds. For grain and wine they gash themselves. They rebel against me. Although I trained and strengthened their arms, yet they devise evil against me. They return, but not upward. They are like a treacherous bow. Their princes shall fall by the sword because of the insolence of their tongue. This shall be their derision in the land of Egypt. Word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
You don't have to hold that up.
Okay. She was just asking us.
No, because it's the camera up here. So, well, we got to learn these things, you know. You think, oh, I've got a video camera here, but oh, that's right, there's a video camera there. Well, as we begin looking at this passage, one of the things we have to remind ourselves, in Hebrew, there aren't uppercase letters and lowercase letters. So as you're looking at something, a word might have two meanings or multiple meanings. We might, if we put an uppercase letter, say, it means this. But if we put a lowercase letter, it would mean this. And one of those words is the word Adam. Adam literally means red or red dirt. And it refers to that the first man was made, he was from Adam. He was made from the dirt. And if you go back and look in Genesis, in the beginning, God doesn't give him a name. It's just the process of how he was created, that he was made from Adam. That then, later, he's described as Adam. Now, Eve got a name, but Adam didn't really have a name. So the word Adam can mean the dirt. It can mean mankind in general. All of humanity is Adam. Or it can also mean a little place that was on the other side of the Jordan River, where when the Hebrew children had been wandering through the wilderness, and they came up to the time that Joshua was going to part the waters and they were going to cross over the Jordan, that was at Adam. So Adam is a place. It's first what we call first man, and it refers to all people in general. So when Hosea says here, but like Adam, like Adam, they trespass, they transgress the covenant. Where's he referring to? Well, the Jewish commentators tend to refer to it as an example of the first Adam and the general nature of all people. So you and I and all other people are like Adam in that we have sinned. And Paul talked about that as we've been going through Romans, that Adam sinned and we have followed suit with that. We are no different than Adam. We have committed sin. All we like sheep have gone astray. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So we are like Adam. Adam didn't make us sin, but we sin just like Adam did. Timothy Green, a Nazarene theologian, as he looked at this passage, used it to say that, well, perhaps it's referring to that place that's where they crossed over the Jordan. And what Hosea is saying, that from the time they entered into the promised land, they were rebellious people. Well, and if we actually look back and see, even in the wilderness, they were rebellious people. And they had to wait a whole generation of people to die before they could enter. And then as soon as they entered in, they began rebelling again. As soon as they entered the land of milk and honey, flowing with all that they would desire, they still turned away from God. And the reason that Green uses that of the Adam at the Jordan River is because the word here, they transgress the covenant, or they it's actually a synonym, and the word in Hebrew also means crossover. So they crossed over the covenant. In other words, it's a way of saying they broke the covenant. They went beyond the covenant. They didn't follow the rules of the covenant. They crossed past them. They ignored them and went on and did what they wanted to do. But it also reflects that they crossed over the Jordan River on dry land. The Lord had opened up that land for them. And it's also the same word that means to trespass. We say them when we say the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So we have crossed over the boundaries of what God wants us to do and to live by. We have broken the covenant. And so the word can mean either one of these. And so that kind of makes it a little complex to say, well, which one was Hosea referring to? Nah, we don't know. But on the other hand, either way you go, it kind of says the same thing. And then from that point, he goes on in the next two verses, and he cites two places that they have broken the commandments, that they have disobeyed the Lord. They've not lived according to the Lord, and they've lived rebellious lives. So that kind of goes with Green and saying you got the place Adam, the place Gibeah, or Gilead, and the place Shechem. So three places. But it also could be all people are like this, and here's examples of where they've done it. They've done it in Gilead, and they did it in Shechem. So they all kind of fit. The area of Gilead is the place where the tribes of Reuben and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh settled. So it's a large area. If you go to Joshua in the 22nd chapter, when they crossed over and they were given their territories of where each tribe would go to, those tribes went and they created a large altar so that they wouldn't have to travel so far back to the altar that the rest of the Hebrew people were going to. So they created their own place that they would worship. And that created some consternation among the people, and they saw them as being rebellious. We're a part of the same tribe. We are the people of God. We are to do this and worship together, and rather than creating our own place, that we might do that. And the city of Shechem in the Old Testament was originally created as a place of refuge. These were the cities of refuge where a person, if they had committed a crime, or if they were accused of committing a crime that they didn't commit, they could run to a city of refuge and they would be protected. A sanctuary place. And unfortunately, Shechem had no longer just become a sanctuary, it had become a sanctuary for thieves and robbers, murderers, people who had done dastardly deeds. And so it became the den of thieves and murderers. Kind of, it makes me think of those Western movies, you know, and you're watching the bad guys, as they dart out of town, they head to some little place over near Mexico or across in Mexico that was their cave, and they'd set up watch, but they'd have almost like a little village. They'd have a whole town that would be their little place of refuge, and they could do all the things that they did, and then they'd go off and do something bad again. Well, Gilead and Shechem, in addition to those things, became known as places of murder. That not only people who had murdered, but who continued to live the pattern of taking people's lives. And it became commonplace. In verse 10, Hosea describes this abuse and perversion, not only of the people, but of the religious power. And he says that it's a horrible thing. And the Hebrew word there for horrible thing is a word that means, literally, and I've talked about this before, that Hebrew words have their definition, but they also have a visual illustration that goes along with them. And the visual illustration of a horrible thing is something that makes your hair stand up. Oh, that is horrible. Hair bristles up. And so Hosea, as he looks at who they have become and what they have done a horrible thing. It would make the hair stand up on your head, much less also the back of your neck. And he goes on to describe them by their prostitution and their whoredom. And we saw this and talked about this in the beginning of Hosea, that this pattern and ideal was part of the pagan fertility rituals, that a man who wanted to have a good crop would go to a temple and have sex with a prostitute. And as he spilled out his seed with the prostitute, it was to be illustrative of the fact that God would spill out the seed on the land and make it fertile. So it's this perverted idea that the more that a man went and did that, the better his crops were going to be. I'm not sure how that really ever worked out, but that was the idea. That was a part of the Canaanite fertility rituals. And we had talked about that. Perhaps that was what Hosea's wife had been engaged in. She had been one of those temple prostitutes, and he got her out of that role. And but she kind of had that within her and found it difficult to stay pure to one person because she had been used to having men come and go with her frequently. But this has now become the pattern, and just as Hosea experienced it in his life, and the Lord used that in Hosea's life to illustrate Israel, here Hosea is saying, yes, this is what the people of Israel are doing. They are being like my wife was. They're going out and having adulterous, which is synonymous with idolatrous lives. They are worshiping other gods and other things. And then he turns from that and he says, Judah, don't think you're too comfortable. This is what Israel is doing and what Ephraim is doing. And you are not far behind it. What you sow, you will reap. That's the harvest that's coming to Judah. This is not a positive statement. This is a warning statement. You will have a day of harvest too. You will be cut down, for you are doing the same things. And most of our Bibles have a little space there between the two halves of verse 11. Remember, that's because the person that labeled chapters and verses was on the horse, and he put that as chapter 11, but in all practicality, the latter half goes down with chapter 7. And so most printers of the Bibles put a little separation in there to show that. And so that there's this statement here, and we're going to see it a few times in this passage, that the Lord just plants this idea out there. When I restore the fortunes of my people, when I would heal Israel. There's a little question in that way. He doesn't say, when I heal Israel, but when I would heal them. As I try to do good, what I discover is Ephraim's treachery just becomes more apparent. I try and do a good thing for somebody, and they just repay my kindness with more evil. The wickedness, the permeation of this wickedness in their life just becomes so apparent. They don't know how to respond to the good that God wants to do in their lives. They have become so entangled in the sin that they can't let go of it. They just have to keep doing it. They have forgotten God so much that they are unaware that God remembers who they are and knows what they are doing. They think that they have gotten away from God. It's kind of like this morning when I was trying to pray with the boys. And when I would open up my eyes, one little boy would fold his hands and be nice. As soon as I went to close my eyes, he started picking at another boy. He didn't think I was watching. Well, I can't see with my eyes closed. But God didn't close his eyes. It's that whole thing, peekaboo that you play with a baby, and you close out and they think you're gone because they can't see you. That's what Israel has become. They think, oh, we can't see God, so God's not there, and God doesn't see us. But God does see. He knows everything that's going on. He's aware of their wickedness. And their wickedness has become so treacherous that it's become a lie in their hearts and minds. It is deceptive. They begin to think good. They begin to think it's okay. We've always heard that say, well, everybody else is doing it. Yeah, I remember using that excuse a couple times with my dad. And him saying, yeah, if everybody else jumps off a mile-high bridge, you going to do it too? Just because everybody's doing it doesn't make it right, doesn't make it good. And so they have been deceived, and all of their deeds have now turned back on them and become a lie. And we know that Satan is the deceiver. And they are being deceived by what they are doing. And it is so pervasive, it has gone from all levels of people, all the way up to the top and to the king. The rulers are as much a part of the problem as anyone else. There's no saying that, well, yeah, those are poor, low people, and they don't, they're just the trash of society, and yeah, we know they commit all the crimes. They don't commit all the crimes. There's a lot of people that look pretty clean that commit a lot of crimes. We call them white-collar crimes. Sometimes the white-collar crimes are worse than the others. Because one, they know better. Two, they have the power. They have the power to make a difference. And they have chosen to let that power be used in the wrong direction. Well, Hosea goes on from there in the fourth verse of chapter 7, and he throws out just a plethora of metaphors. And this is one of the things that's very rich about Hosea is the number of metaphors. The first 3 chapters were a big metaphor, and his wife Hosea. In verses 4 through 7, he uses a metaphor of a burning oven. Think about, in that day, if you, and some of you may have used a wood burner or a coal burner, if you load the oven, fill it to its max with wood and fire, and then walk off and leave it. And you think, well, there's just a little fire in there. But it's untended. That fire begins to grow. And more of that wood or that coal becomes ignited becomes red and eventually becomes white hot. And there's just so much of it that the internal fire ends up becoming an external explosion. And not only does it burn those around, it burns and consumes everyone. It's one of the old dangers of the wood burner, or it's still today the wood burner, but the coal burner, load that in a cold wintry night, load that oven, get it too hot, everybody goes to bed. And a spark flies out of there and burns the place up. And so he uses that even those who were the upright and the just messengers from God began to be consumed and destroyed by the deeds, by this burning fire. In verse 8, he describes them as mixed up. They have mixed with the people. They have created confusion. They have been deceptive, and they've got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's all right. And everybody goes, well, okay, is that not good? Is that not right? And everybody's like, well, I would have thought that was not a good thing to do. Oh, it's all right as long as you do this with it. So they've mixed up and they've created confusion. And then in the latter part of that verse, he describes them as a cake that's not turned. Wanda was describing to somebody yesterday about using the air fryer and cooking fish sticks. And she said that halfway through, you need to turn them over. Why? Why not just leave them there? I mean, it's hot all the way around. Well, in that case, what you'll end up is the bottom is burnt and the top is not cooked. And so this is the cake there. You have to think of the way that they cooked at those times. And so they had to take it out and flip over the thing. Otherwise, the bottom would be burnt, because those clay ovens like that, they're heating like 750 degrees. If you don't turn that bread in there, then one side's burnt, the other side is doughy. It's not fit to eat. So it's a half-baked cake. And then you probably can think of somebody that's half-baked in the way that they've lived their lives. And then he describes them as being devoured in their strength. They are weak. Because they are weak, they are eaten up by the people that they have called upon to help them. There is strength. If you don't have some strength, if you're just totally weak and you're naive, and you give power over to somebody else, then, and in this case, giving power to Egypt, or giving power to Assyria, who don't have great intentions for Israel. They're looking at how much land they can capture, what they can do. And so they come in and they're going to destroy them. They devour them. They eat them up. He says that they are like gray hairs. Most of us have gray hair, and I think all of us do. So, you ever thought that you didn't have many gray hairs, and then you went to the beautician, and the beautician made the comment about, oh, you're getting a lot of gray hair. You look, where? They're rapidly coming on. And that's kind of the way that gray hairs are. Gray hairs like to find another hair and convince it to become gray. And they are aging in a way that they're not even recognizing. They're not looking in the mirror. They're not looking at themselves. And most of us, when we look in the mirror, we see somebody that's 20 or 30 or 40 years younger than we are. We look in and, we don't see. We like to stand one way because that way doesn't show the other side, If we look on a front on, we don't see it, we turn, let's not do that. They have deceived themselves and they are rapidly aging, unaware of the fact that they are dying. They are blinded by pride. So blind that they can't see their face. Rhonda will sometimes say to me, in fact, she said it to me this morning as we were leaving. And she goes, "Why the scowl on your face?" And I'm like, "I don't have a scowl on my face." She goes, "Well, you ought to tell your face." It's like, I couldn't think of any reason I had a scowl on my face. But she thought it was there. And they're living in a way, the pride, that they don't even see. And I thought of it when she said that, and I thought, yeah, you remember that picture you got in there of your great aunt and uncle? They looked like they were sucking on a green persimmon when they took the picture. They just sourpuss looking. And she said, well, that's the way they always looked. And it was like, ooh. Their lives were probably then like hard lives. But they don't even recognize the pride or the frustration that's in them. Meek calls them a dove. And we have probably more pigeons out there than doves. I'd put the pigeons in the same class with the doves because they're up on the telephone line together. They're a simple bird. They're really not all that bright. And he describes them as mindless. They're senseless. They have no heart. They really don't reason. They don't think through things. They just do. Just react. And they can be easily caught. He says he should throw the net over them and catch them. And they're not smart enough to run away from it. They'll just be caught in their problems. They cannot escape. And the word here in verse 12, sometimes we misread it. It says, I will discipline them according to the report. This is one of those words where discipline has two sides of meaning. You can discipline someone. It means that you're instructing them, teaching them, guiding them. You're shaping them for the future. But there's another word for discipline. When you get called to the principal's office, they often aren't there to start off with instruction. They're there to punish you. And this is what God is saying. I will discipline them. I will punish them according to the report that's been made to the congregation. They will not escape the punishment that is coming. As he goes into verse 13, he cries it out, woe, woe. And then repeats it with destruction to them. Woe to them, destruction to them. They have trespassed. They have crossed over the boundaries that God has given. I've given that illustration several times about the fish that was in the tank, the little catfish, and he thought that he was being kept away from things and he decided to jump out of the tank and become free. And he got out of the tank and he's down there flopping around. The other fish are looking at him and saying, wow, he's free, he's free. And then all of a sudden he quits flopping as much and then he rolls over on his back and no longer moves. He had crossed the boundary. Fish do not live outside of the water. We are made to live within the boundaries that God has created for us. God is not being mean by giving us boundaries. He's showing us that if you live within my boundaries, you will have the most productive life. You will enjoy life to its fullest. But if you cross over the boundaries, you bring the destruction upon yourself. And the Lord, as he sees this, he expresses that he wants to redeem them. It is God's desire to bring redemption. However, God cannot save people who do not want to be saved. And we've used that picture before of the man, of Jesus knocking at the door of a person, and Jesus does not open the door. He does not bust through the door. Jesus offers redemption, but we have to open the door. We have to let him in, and they have not let God in. Instead, they have turned and lied to him. Their heart is insincere. They wail from bed, oh, we're in pain, we're in agony, oh, we need this, we need that. Oh, well, do this. Oh, no, I don't want that. I want you to do this. I don't know how many times I've seen that in people's lives. A person will say, oh, I need help, I need help, I need help. And I say, well, oh, good. They'll come and they'll say, well, would you pay the gas bill for us? Would you pay the light bill for us? Would you do this with the water bill? Would you do this for it? And I said, well, I can't do that, but I can give you food. Well, I don't want food. I got plenty of food. Well, if you took free food, you'd have money to buy the gas. If you quit smoking the cigarettes or drinking the alcohol or using the drugs, you'd have money for gas. If you quit running all over town doing this, this, and that, you'd have money for this. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to do what I want to do. Well, you can't have it both ways. They're insincere. They don't really want help. They'll say that we need grain and wine, but what they really want is not God. They want a handout. They want somebody to meet their physical need, but the greatest need in our lives, the need for God himself. No, not interested in that. They plot evil against the Lord, even though God has a history of showing his care for his people over and over again. The final metaphor that Hosea uses here is that they are a treacherous, or literally a faulty bow. They do not operate the way they are intended to operate. The bow is faulty because it doesn't shoot straight. It shoots crooked. That's why it's treacherous. It could hit somebody off to the side, do damage. Well, that's no good bow, or not a good operator of the bow. But you got to have it sighted in. You got to use it the right way. If you do, it will be good. But because it's treacherous, because it's faulty, it'll be destroyed. And they will ultimately be defeated. Well, back in the early part of the 6th chapter, we saw 2 things that God desires. He desires faithfulness to the covenant and knowledge of Him. To know Him intimately, personally. And yet, Israel, Ephraim, has repeatedly, persistently been adulterous, idolatrous. They've demonstrated infidelity to God. They have been unfaithful. They've said one thing, they have done the other thing. As we think about that, is that problem any different in our society today? I think we can see the same problem. And unfortunately, at times we see it even in the church. People who say, well, I believe in God. I trust God. But they do it when it's convenient for them. They aren't really faithful in the way that they live their lives. They cry out for God to heal them, yet not willing to serve Him and to worship Him. It's like, oh, where is God? I feel so lonely. I feel so lonely. Well, there were people here in church today. You could have come and you wouldn't have been lonely. You'd find there are people here that care about you and would encourage you and show love to you. Well, but it's just not going the way I want it to go. Well, but God is still here. God wants to work in and through our lives. We have to demonstrate a consistent and committed relationship with God. Faithfulness to the covenant. That's what God's looking for. And as we continue to look at Israel, and we see and be warned that if we get lax, the same things can happen to us as well. May God be praised.